Hi all you mystery buffs and meddling kids, it's your girl Pammy Chanel back with another video. I apologize, it is a voiceover video and not my beautiful face, but I've had to do my 5th grade moving up ceremony, and then my son graduated from high school. So it's been a really crazy week and I'm not feeling all that great, so I definitely don't want to be in front of a camera. But the next video, I promise you guys I will be. Plus I want to make sure that I'm kind of getting these videos out on a regular schedule because I have a long list of things that nobody's talking about that I want to talk about. Anyway, we're going to be covering today the life and death episode of the Gloriavale Documentary. You can watch this documentary on Amazon Prime if you have a Prime membership. It is free. So for the second episode, Life and Death, the narrator begins by giving a brief summary of the community, reminding us of how this lifestyle is not everyone's cup of tea, and how women must submit to their husbands and the people must listen to the leaders. Pretty much just kind of giving you guys an overview of the community again. Now this documentary was kind of weird for me to pick out when it began and when it ended, so I'm just going to assume that it began and ended in 2012 and 2015. I know the people in New Zealand were able to see it in the summer of 2015, but in America, we didn't get this documentary until 2016. And I'm only saying this because of the death we're about to talk about. And also, Paul Valor is now 22 in this episode, so I know that 2 years has passed. First, we see Paul appear with his wife, Pearl, and their daughter, Esther. We see clips from the first episode replaying Paul and Pearl's engagement and wedding. The narrator begins to explain how they don't use contraceptives and they think every child is a blessing from God. And of course, Pearl is expecting another blessing, along with Paul's mother, Purity, who will be having her 12th child. Then we meet Rose and Steady Stantrue. Steady is one of the founders or first followers of the community and one of the leaders. They have 57 great-grandchildren. Their family is a community all by themselves. I mean, seriously, that's a lot of grandkids. Then it goes back to our favorite couple in their bedroom with their baby Esther. And Paul claims that Pearl was less comfortable with herself before she married him. Now, I'm just trying to figure out how the hell does he know, since he didn't even really know her before they got married. I don't know, but now she's more outgoing and less shy because of him and Esther. And Paul goes off to his job making pet food in the factory, and Pearl goes to work in the community kitchen after dropping Esther to the baby room. Now here's an observation that I've made. How can this really be traditional parenting if Esther spends the majority of her time in a baby room with someone else and other children while her mother works in the community kitchen? It sounds like modern day motherhood to me, where we moms go to work and our children either go to daycare or school. I don't see any big difference here. So when Esther starts preschool, when she's around 3 or 4 years old, there's a chance that she's probably going to be taught by her grandmother, Pearl's mom. And we're reminded that the women in Gloriavale do all the domestic jobs. I mean, how could we forget? I mean, they keep throwing that in our faces. We then see Rose Stantrue, who is a trained teacher and is 87 years old, still working in the classroom. The narrator begins to explain how the school is too small for the expanding community. And I mean, when the average household has about 10 kids, I would expect for the school building to need to be bigger. Then it spans to the men working on a new building with a design from the Czech Republic. It actually looks really cool. It reminds me of the Lincoln Logs that I used to have in my classroom when I taught like preschool and kindergarten. It looked really cool. It took them 7 years to build up enough funds. We then see Dove Love and the single women bring lunch down to the men for them to eat. And we see Steady Stantrue again. This time he's walking in with a cane to observe the process that has been made on the school. Steady has been leading and training the community's building projects for over 40 years. Steady's health is beginning to fail, and he understands that he might not be around to see the building with students actually in it. Paul mentions how Steady knows he's dying, but it doesn't seem to bother him. Paul states, death isn't something to be feared to us. It is just the only way to get to heaven. You either die or the Lord comes back. The battle is almost finished, and there he is going to get his reward. Then it switches to the dairy farm, and it shows some teenage boys working with the calves. They believe that God has given them dominion over the animals. And so with that, they use modern methods of farming, such as in vitro fertilization. However, when it comes to producing children, God has control of contraception. And then we see Pearl visiting the midwife, Harmony Helpful. You gotta love that name. That's just a really cute name. And the women have their babies in a room set aside in one of the brothels or dorm rooms. It then switches back to Steady, who can no longer walk and is using an electric wheelchair. The older people here, at least from the documentary standpoint, I have not seen anything or read anything about any type of elder abuse. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but I haven't read anything about it. But the older people seem to be very well taken care of. Steady says he's grateful he's never been on pension and doesn't have to worry about, anything that he needs. And I know what you're thinking. But Pam, you didn't like when Dove said this. Well, I believe people over 65 should be taken care of and should be free of struggling and shouldn't have to worry about how they're going to survive. You can call me a socialist. I don't care. You can suck it. He also says he gets to grow old where there's a lot of life and activity. And then we see some of the children show him their baby dolls and sing with him, I'll Fly Away. And here's where the tearjerker really comes in for me. He tells them he will be the first one to go and to fly away and see the Lord. And it's a really sweet scene. And I'm not sure, what time of year this is or what actual month or date, because this community is so secretive. However, the narrative does state that as the spring rain comes, so I know it's during spring, Steady begins to pass away. And Dove and others from the community begin to sing, and they each were able to give him a kiss and tell him goodbye. And the only issue that I have with this is not with the people in the community. It's more along the documentary. And I actually have included a picture, so trigger warning. You actually see him laying in the bed and kind of struggling. And even though it's just a glimpse from the bedroom, it's still kind of sad. And it kind of reminded me of when my grandfather died. So it was very, very triggering for me. But it was very sweet to have the whole community kind of come in and love on him one last time and also give love to his wife. Next, it shifts to preparing for his funeral. His coffin is made by Noah Hopeful. The body is not embalmed. Rather, it is washed, clothed, and placed in a space cooler. Now, they say cooler, but I'm going to say for us Americans, a great big old freezer that they have. The women prepare lunch a day ahead of time before the funeral. And Dove stencils a portion of a poem that Rose wrote to be placed on his coffin. Gosh, Dove Love is talented, y'all. She's talented. Then we are at the gravesite where Steady's grandson, Reddy, is marking the burial plot and digging the grave. The soil is so delicate that they have to put a frame in it to keep it from caving in, just in case it rains before the burial. The next day, Steady's body is wrapped in a white shroud and placed in the coffin by his grandsons. Then everyone stops work for the service. They sing songs and they share stories of his life. And it was definitely a celebration of life. There were some points where you saw some people getting teary-eyed, but it was definitely a celebration of life. It wasn't a sad funeral. Then Steady's grandsons carry his coffin to the gravesite, followed by his wife Rose and the rest of the community. I'm going to tell you, they have a song that's playing as they're walking the coffin to the gravesite, and that song is very, very catchy. Gloriavale has some catchy tunes in it, and the people there really love to sing, it seems like. The narrator states that the children are taught that God is always watching, so they should strive for heaven and fear hell. The children, of course, are curious to see what the grave looks like. And as he's being lowered in, they're allowed to gather around and take a look. It didn't look safe enough for me, but no one got hurt, so I'm not going to complain about it. Then we see hopeful Christian give a final message. Now, here's another issue I have with the people who made the documentary. This man has supposedly stepped down due to circumstances that I'm going to cover in my final video on this group. But if you were watching it for the first time, as I was, you would have no idea that he was the person that founded the group and he was a leader. And they're very, very manipulative in this. Then we see Paul telling us there are two ways to leave the community. The way Steady did, which they view as temporary, or to walk away from the community into the world, which they feel is permanent. So basically, Paul is saying that we all going to hell because we don't live in Gloriavale. But it's all right with me at this point. Then they shift to a celebration day that's held. Now, they don't celebrate things like Easter, Christmas, or birthdays, any sort of holidays, but they do have days they set aside for fun. We see them in regular clothes, jumping in pools, which would seem uncomfortable, at least to me. I don't like to have my clothes wet. They have kids eating cotton candy, and they just seem to be having a lot of fun, but fun can only last for so long, because then we see a shot of all that laundry, and of course, long-suffering Dove is working in the laundry room. I really hope that they stay true to having a day of rest, because these people seem to do nothing more than work. Whew. They work like a slave with a smile, and I just can't imagine this. I am all for having a good work ethic, but this is taking it overboard. Her team is hanging out clothes on the line, and then they go on to have Paul describe the brothels or the dorms, but I already gave you a description of those, so I'm going to move on. Steady was the shepherd of the brothel that Paul and Pearl lived in. So we see the men praying for a decision on who to replace Steady with, and they end up replacing him with Paul's father. There's one other thing that I really did not mention to you guys when I did my introduction to Gloriavale video, the very first one. There's a hierarchy in this community. And what I've noticed, especially since I've dug a lot deeper from just this Goody Two Shoes documentary, everyone that we see that they're going to have us like, or that they put in the documentary and actually give actual, voices to, they all have some type of ties to the leaders. Either their grandchildren are the leaders, or their parents are leaders, or they're a actual grandchild of hopeful Christian. There's a hierarchy there. We don't see the ones who are at the bottom of the hierarchy. And those are the ones who you'll find out later are the ones that kind of end up taking some of the brunt of the abuse. But moving on. We then see Paul and his family together. We learn that Purity, his mom, and Pearl's due dates are a week apart. It then shifts to Purity, who's delivered a baby boy, but then he developed a high fever, and her husband decided that they needed to go outside of the community to seek help because, the men makes those type of calls. The baby is given antibiotics, and they are warned that he may have to be airlifted to another hospital. The baby does respond to the treatment, though, so he doesn't have to be sent to another hospital. Pearl due date arrives during movie night. And yes, these movies are highly censored. They watch some type of pirate movie. And I'm going to assume it probably took place in like the 40s or the 50s. There's no way in the world they're watching Pirates of the Caribbean. So Paul grabs them some treats while they wait for Pearl's labor to progress. And Pearl finally goes into full labor, and she and Paul go to the community maternity suite. She's very calm, which she did better to me with natural birth than I did. She has a water birth, but there's trouble with the baby boy's arrival. The cord is wrapped around his neck, but Harmony Helpful is able to maneuver the cord from around him, and he's fine. I would have been scared to death. After the birth scene, we see them back in their room with Harmony Helpful, giving the baby a checkup, and Paul's mom returns home from being with the baby in the hospital. And we see them, and they're at their church service, and then at the banquet hall, Purity announces that their son's name will be Daniel, and Paul announces that his son's name will be Josiah. Towards the end of the documentary, Pearl says she desires to be a godly mother and wife, and Paul reminds us of how we sinners of the world have ambitions for cars and houses and money, while their ambitions are spiritual, to serve the Lord. He's working towards a greater ambition of going to heaven. Then he states that they both want to have more children, and Pearl gives kind of a blank stare at this point. Then at the end of the documentary, it shows children of the community and their unique names. Now, I'm not going to post any pictures of the children. I do try to shield the kids' pictures because they're not old enough. But some of the names are Devoted Christian, Merciful Disciple, Delightful Hope, Believing Disciple, Conviction Stand True, Deliverance Hopeful, Committed Steadfast, my favorite, United Steadfast, and Obedient Stand True. I'm not going to knock it. We plan on having one more child, and if it's a boy, we're going to pick a name that's kind of out there too, so I'm definitely not going to knock their names. Anyway, that's the end of that episode, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I do not look forward to making the video for the final episode. It is very repetitive, and we're going to hear about birth again, and we're going to see another wedding again. And this third episode of this documentary just burns my butter. I'm telling you. Not so much because of what's happening, just because of the fact that I know that these people could live more fulfilling lives on the outside. But when that's all you know, that's all you know. And I don't want to be judgmental. And please, guys, don't leave these people any nasty comments. Anytime we focus on groups like this, we want to make sure that they have an understanding that if they decide to leave, which some of them have, and we're going to talk about that in the next episode, if they decide to leave, they have people on the outside who are not heathens and not devils and don't want to harm them, but want to help them, want to get them adjusted to being in the world, as they say, and that we're not all bad people. But anyway, that's all I have for today. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down button. Either way, we're good over here. If you're enjoying my videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel and social media pages. I'll link them in the description. And until next time, stay nosy and stay meddling.